and first say welcome to our Thursday evening, Friday morning session. Welcome to all our folks who are here in the Thursday evening group and the Friday morning life over in Japan. We're glad to have you. I'm going to be letting some folks in the room. This is our Thursday, Friday gathering of folks who are connected through Blue Canoe to Colorville. So if you're here, it's because you have some awareness, at least through our website, that Blue Canoe exists, right? And so we get together with any questions you have. Tonight I'll highlight some tips for using Blue Canoe while teaching remotely. Like, how do you weave it into your actual teaching moment, and in a way that is beneficial to everybody, and for what purpose, right? But I'm also here to answer questions you may have about the chart. And so I'll start with, Carol raised that question in seeing the chart. Great, and I'm letting Neil into the room. So far we have a lot of folks that I just, what I consider regulars. It's great to see you here. So it really is, this can be a personalized session. The other thing I'll mention though is every fourth Thursday is a lab class, which means we invite also Blue Canoe users to come to the room. These would be adults who use the app, and we basically have this wonderful teacher-student room, and we cover a language concept together and invite input from teachers. So that's a bit of what we do here. And so last week was one of those sessions, and this is just teachers tonight. So greetings. Yeah. If we could, why don't we just, if we can hear from you, let's open the chat. And I'd like to hear questions like Carol's. Carol came to the room with a question about the chart. Do we recommend now that teachers teach both Auburn and Orange? And if you would, go ahead and use the chat to type in any other questions, whether they seem related to that or not. Anything that you hope we can address tonight in our short session, while I just address that. Skip, since you and Anna, and especially you, Anna, and now especially you've been in the room with me a lot lately, what do you think my answer is to that? Do we now have to teach Orange and Auburn with the new chart? Is that what the new chart communicates?
No, it just helps you.
Yeah.
Actually, I resisted Orange Door, but now that it's there, I'm a big fan of it. It just makes life so much easier. And Auburn Dog, Auburn Dog is in my dialect, so I am attached to it. Yes, and we do teach it. And my students actually can hear the difference between Olive and Auburn. So in the old card game where they were combined, they really had trouble with that, and would argue over, is it really Olive or is it Auburn?
Interesting. Skip, do you have additional thoughts on that?
Well, the main thing, it was the movement up to R. I don't know how to say it, Orange Door. So I want to say orange.
And you can.
Yeah.
And you can.
So that's what I do. But yeah, it helps, how it helps learners. That's what I was interested in. That it seemed to help a lot of learners, and that's why you put it in there. So,
Yeah, so it's also, remember, I'm someone who doesn't have Auburn in her dialect. And so when I teach with the chart, I don't categorize anything in Auburn. Yeah. And yet it's not a problem that it's on the chart. It's a great way for me to address with a student, like maybe one of Anna's students, who asked me about a word and say, well, isn't that Auburn? I could say, yeah, that is, but not in my, just not the way I do it. So we can put it right here on the line. So having Auburn's good. And then Orange is great because it provides an answer to this question. And so that's kind of the short answer is, as mentioned by Matthew in the chat, and thanks Matthew for that comment. These O-shaped vowels that start all of them with O, if everyone kind of make that O position. So this feels like a replay for you, Anna, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
O, O, O. Now, if we move to 3 different destinations with our O, we're going to hear O for rose, or for orange, and oi for turquoise. Yeah. And those are the 3 vowels that start with the same position and move outward in that way. And that's a real revelation for our students. So it's kind of this you know, it's an object that we connect with from how we each speak English, but then it also connects with the students in ways that help them that might be different from the way we speak English. So Neil, I know, is in the room. Hi, Neil. Yeah. With Neil, in the room, I know have you come to use Orange Door some, or do you have, what's your feeling about it these days? British speaker English?
I tend to try and mimic an American accent a lot of the time.
Okay. How do you feel doing
beginners, that? For beginners, I don't mind. It's something I've got used to, and I just explained that for me, it's very different. Even Auburn Dog and Orange Door, even the sound of the color and the word are different for me. So it's you know.
Yeah. So for you, the O of orange, because you syllabify it at the runge, right? It's orange, and for orange, a lot of us, it's orange. So you use a different vowel here, probably more of an Auburn sound. But in the end, I'm sort of pointing to Neil, right, Neil? But, you know, you find this way that's helpful to learners that is close enough to you too. So it really, we just found over and over, Carol, literally over and over, students kept coming through their teachers to me saying, you should have this new color vowel called Orange Door. I know, because it was my original chart in 1999. Since I'm a California girl, I did not have anything for this thing that we now called Auburn. And orange is what I had there, because it's the only time I use anything remotely like Auburn consciously, or kind of thing. So it came back time and again, and by demand, we wanted one chart that could unite all of our teachers across at least North America, an inclusive chart, instead of publishing literally 4 kinds of charts, which was a crazy headache and a lot of money lost in trying to please everybody. So we have one inclusive chart, and students are very happy.
Thank you. And did you mention the game is different now too? I had the original game.
The game is just a little different, and we've upgraded it with images that match Blue Canoe, because our work with Blue Canoe, you know, raised this, like, how do we represent these images in little bitty circles in an app? And when we did that, we found that dress and coat, which were the original red dress and rose coat, they shrink down and they just look like clothes. And so, so you just got a bunch of clothing and the sock, and, you know, you're like, ah. And so the pepper is just really iconic, because cultures around the world use red peppers, right? And then the boat, it was kind of an homage to the canoe, and it worked out nicely as a distinctive image that's not too gendered against the color. So a lot of little, you know, thoughts there. For a while, this was going to be red thread. You know what's wrong with that, right? It turned into a consonant fight. Like, students struggled so much more with the TH and the R than gave them time to focus on the eh. And so thread was a disaster. And we tested it. So everything has a story. So tonight, and if you have other questions or comments, that was a fun one though. Tonight's theme is teaching in the moment with Blue Canoe, not just saying, go play Blue Canoe for homework, but rather what can we actually, you know, what can we use as a resource during a Zoom or other online session? How many of you are using specifically Zoom to teach as opposed to some other platform for video conferencing? Is everybody using this sometimes or never? What are you all using? Roland, you using something internal?
Yeah, we're using Microsoft Teams.
Microsoft Teams, okay. Okay, Matthew, you're using something that's inner.
I use Zoom to teach sometimes large classes, but there are some connection issues via Zoom. Okay. I had students who weren't able to talk, and I involve them just by having them type their answers in the chat. So like I need to find a way to get them involved in the lesson. So
well, we do whatever we need to, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna walk through 3 tips today that kind of lace up with each other. all in the interest of using Zoom in the moment in a kind of video interface. So we'll use Zoom as the example since we're in it. And then you can let me know, Neil and Roland, like for Microsoft Teams, if there's a corollary to what I suggest. Yay, Penny's here, and she wasn't eaten by the bear. Wow, she ran into a real bear. You okay?
I'm okay.
We're glad to have you.
He was coming the other way, and I'm like, I gotta go this way. Anyway, thank you. Sorry, Karen, I had to go around the other way. I couldn't ask you to excuse me. I have to pass.
Hey, for us, it's very much worth the story. I don't know if it's the story you want for yourself, but I like being able to say my colleague will be here. She's been delayed by a bear. So that's great. So if you would, I imagine most of you probably have a phone close by. And the first tip involves going into Blue Canoe. And if you would, go straight down to, I'm going to use it this way. Go to Browse, which are, our little sort of waffle menu down there, or the squares. And then if you would, since I'm modeling this, you can basically say, go down to Work, the blue, and click on the first item, Business Meetings. And please click on Business Meetings too. Okay, so right here in Zoom, I can go ahead and let you know what I want you to do. It involves some pretty careful listening. I could also put that into the chat. If I typed it up in advance, I could send it that way, right? So now we're all on the same lesson at the same time, and that's kind of nice. And you can do this with any of the lessons, which is to arrive on the first sentence of any lesson, right? Meaning we don't have to be recording anything at this time. Greetings to Herrick and others who have just joined us, Gisela. Okay. All right. So all of the first sentences are available. And I want you to think for a minute, what does that do for us? If your students can all look at, the same sentence at the same time because you've directed them there, what kinds of things can we do with this sentence now that we have it? Apart from the obvious, which would be to, mute ourselves, record, and then hold up our, that's kind of goofy. That's the kind of practice they're going to do on their own, is record and assess and so forth. But before we get to that step, what can we as teachers do just having the common sentence on each of our students' whiteboards, if you will? Ideas?
Identify the stressed words. Like ask the students not to show the hints.
There we go.
And
like
what are the stressed words?
Perfect. So know that today I was talking with a group and they were, everyone was like, wow, I didn't know about that. Right now, if you look, my hints are showing here. These are the 3 key stressed vowels, right? But you don't have to see those. You can go up to this corner and look at the options. And of course, when I touch it that way, it doesn't show. But here, we can go to hide hints. Mm-hmm. And when you hide the hints, nothing happens. When you hide the hints, there you go. When you hide the hints, they go away. And for the rest of that lesson, you can do those sentences with no hints and see how it goes. Or you can turn them back on. So in teaching your learners to do this, now we have some interesting work to do, right? We can ask, well, what are now that they're all off, what would be next, Matthew? Go ahead and elaborate.
So ask the students which 3 words should be stressed. Like I have hello, it's very nice to meet you. Mm-hmm. So I guess some students would be like hello, nice, and meet, maybe.
Okay. So if I've asked you all to go to the same sentence at the same time, and I've done this, let's say right now in the chat, and I say, go to business, what is it? Business meetings 2. Something like that, I think it was, right? And now we're there. And so in this way, yeah, business meetings 2. We are all on the same sentence. So let's do that right now. Which words, and turn off your hints. There we are. Which words are important in this sentence? Notice that I don't have to just say 3. There might be more than 3 in here. So which words are important in my sentence? Let's see, Skip, everyone's a student right now, right, Skip? Would you go ahead and read this sentence for us? Just read it to us.
Hello, it's very nice to meet you.
Why are you on a different lesson than me? Is
My
everybody on
goodness.
hello? It's very nice to meet
Well,
you.
that was one. I mean, there
That was
isn't
one,
the
where's
business
two?
meetings too. I just changed over, but we were all on business meetings. We just clicked the first one.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
all the more reason. Take a look in the chat and you'll see business to business meetings 2 in this case, just so we can see how easy it is to struggle with specificity here.
Yeah.
Okay. And Penny, by the way, I know you're listening. Penny can take really good notes. You know, we're working on the little things we can do to make this moment easier for you. Meaning we're pretty good at what happens when the learner walks away, but in the moment it's kind of hard to get here. So we might want to play with, you know, how do we name these things and how do we find them easily? Are there going to be numbers involved? You know, that might be interesting, right? So now we have the hints off and we can see, somehow I'm not in that lesson again. What are the important words? I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. Is that what we're all seeing?
Yeah.
Oh, good. So what are some important words in this sentence? Marianne, what are some important words here?
I'm just observing right now.
Good. Okay. Well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but can I have a volunteer to tell me some important words?
Yeah, I'll volunteer because I need to
Sure.
practice this. Actually, this would be very good for me because I really struggle with the sentence stress. So I'm looking at, I see a verb in the first sentence and like is the verb to me, not to provide, but I'm thinking that since the provide is at the end of that thing, that probably you want me to say provide is going to be the important word, not like.
Mm-hmm. But like is a good important word. It's a verb. I like that.
So I'm going to do both. I'd like to provide. I don't think I'm going to do that. Well, I mean, maybe I can. Maybe I'd like to provide.
Yeah.
Context. So context would be an important word, and meeting would be. So those are easy. Context and meeting. But that first one, I never know. I need to provide. I'd like to provide. You know, like a verb seems to me it should be important, but like to, and I'm also I'm linking like to, so that makes it maybe less important and less clear. So maybe provide is the only one that gets it.
So I hear a lot of thinking happening here.
Wow,
right?
yeah. I mean, this is horrible for me. I just can't do it.
I think.
Well, this is great. Maybe this begs, and I think some other people feel the same way, right? It's sort of like, well, how are they supposed to know if I don't?
Exactly.
I think you have to, yeah, I think like providing the specific context and what's going on, because you could be playing a game, kind of guessing at the context, like I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. So some is then stressed. So, you know, it depends on the level of the class and what the context is, what the stress would be.
Good. Well, actually, that's a great comment, and I'd like to speak to that. So in Blue Canoe, we've created sentences in their default state.
Yeah.
Meaning we have to start somewhere, and there is such a thing as a neutral sentence that doesn't have a great deal of implicature attached to it. Meaning if I say, I'd like to apply some I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. You know, suddenly I sound, you know, like I'm denigrating the meeting and I'm a little sarcastic. So we can also get neutral. I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. Neutral?
Yeah.
Pretty neutral. Okay. So there is a neutral thing, and then you can build from there. And that's actually something you could do in the class with this one sentence right then and there. Is let's listen to, and I'll play it, right? I'm the teacher, so I'll play it and we'll just listen to it. I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. Can we all hum that? Is that what it sounded like? Let's listen again. I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. Right? So where were the high notes?
Well, I heard like and provide there.
I did too.
Yeah, provide.
So that's fine. I'd like to provide, I'd like to provide, okay. So in the case of the first phrase there, we made some decisions that, could have gone a couple ways. This could have been considered a 4-beat sentence. I'd like to, I'd like to provide some context for this meeting, 4 beats. But we in general tried to aim for a little faster cadence. I'd like to provide some context for this meeting, right? So the visual way that we parsed it out, there are a couple places where we could probably make it 4 or 2. You'll find, if you look really closely, you'll say, wow, I can see how they made it 3. Why? Because we're on a phone. And if you start ending up with 4 or 5 thought groups, it's really hard to manage the layout. So there are some, moments where we squish things or we spread them out. In this case, like is still going to get feedback so long as provide, context, and meeting are said correctly first, just in terms of the machine learning. But in that moment, that we're not worried about that right now. What we're interested in is what are the 3 beats of this 3-line sentence. I'd like to provide some meeting for this. I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. And we can still honor like. I'd like to provide some meaning for this. I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. Someday I'll learn it, right?
But if I do like and don't do provide, that's a mistake. I'd like to provide some context.
If you say it like that, it's not going to ding you wrong. It still honors as long as like, provide, context, and meeting. And I coded those myself to be to be evaluated. Like, provide, context, meeting. So the 3 words that you see marked in the hints, I want you to just, as I show them, we choose 3 focus words, but that's not all of the words that are content words.
Okay.
This is Matthew's favorite topic, content versus non-content.
Yes, yes. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
No, I was thinking.
Content words are nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and a couple of others that I won't get into right now, right? So if it carries meaning, it's a content word. And we will provide feedback on the word like, and I'll show you right now. I'd look to provide some context for this meeting. And so it goes up and it better do it, right? Ta-da! There's like. Now when I press on this feedback, you're using the wrong color vowel here. Blue moon instead of white tie. Okay. Bye. All right. So you're getting feedback on all content-bearing words in that sentence when they go off and do this on their own. But what I like is what Skip's talking about. I mean, one way you could do it with advanced learners is, here's the default phrase. I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. Now let's imagine if everyone else has provided their version of the context and I'm feeling pretty frustrated and I say, excuse me, how might I say this sentence now?
I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. So that's
I'd like to provide some context for this meeting, right? So you could come up with those scenarios and do a kind of fun lesson on intonation, shifting stress, and implicature of the sort of the context of the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's really great to do that and to explore through, because that's what I did in classes, my speaking and listening classes from a while ago, but just exploring through, because everyone would want to pick one word for the stress in the thought group, right? And they'd say, I'm confused. They would just be overwhelmed, you know? Yeah. So
one is, you could play with stress.
Yeah.
What about substitution activity? Could we do a substitution activity with this one sentence that we've all pulled up?
What are we substituting?
Well, what could we substitute? I'd like to provide some context for this meeting.
Well, we could substitute the words like I need to provide some context for this meeting.
Yep. Good. Yeah, I need to provide some context for this meeting. I need to provide some context for this. What could we put instead of meeting?
Story.
story.
Yeah.
This essay. Yeah.
I need to provide some
Evidence for this conflict.
evidence for this story, right? We can do one change at a time.
Yeah.
And just keep substituting out and see how far you could go by changing one word at a time and changing the sentence, and type it into the chat and see how that, see what has to change. Does a preposition have to change if you change this verb? So you can do some, I think, some pretty creative stuff there. Speaking of creative work, Carol, right? All of this is to say that if you spend even just this time with the sentence on that first screen of a given lesson, what do you think it's going to feel like when they then go back to that lesson for homework that night? Won't it be a little bit like seeing an old friend? Like, I know this sentence pretty well. I think I'll go ahead and practice it a few times. I'll turn off the hints and see how we feel. Meaning it's now no longer just this pat sentence that's sitting in a machine. It's something we've really explored.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other thoughts about what you could do with somebody? All of your students are looking together. One thing I was thinking is, and this is
Can I give an option?
Sure.
Yeah. I would I would model different stress patterns and ask what the meaning is behind them.
Mm-hmm.
Ask
So go the opposite
the context of it. Yeah, like I'd like to add some context. What do I feel? I'd like to add some context. I'd like to add some context. So just put it on different stress and say what do I mean by that? What's my implication? What's the nuance behind it? For more maybe more advanced
shift in
learners.
the meaning. Yeah, the shift in the meaning. Mm-hmm.
Right. So with Skip's ideas, I elaborated on it. It created the meaning shift context, and then we performed it. That's super advanced, right? And now you're saying the opposite, which is great. Like, let's first just say it in a different way and see if students can perceive the mood change. Okay, because a lot of times learners will miss the shifting stress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fantastic.
When I play this game, I mean, when I use this particular activity, before saying the sentence, I usually start with just the color vowels. I, R, E. And then I repeat 3 or 4 times, I, R, E, I, R, E. And then after the 4th time, I'd like to provide some context for this meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And usually I get good results.
That's right. So essentially it's sort of like taking the phone and doing the opposite, putting a piece of paper and saying, let's look at just these 3 color vowels. Mm-hmm. I, E. Everyone try. I, E. Actually, mute yourselves. That's important for this particular thing. And I'll grab my my cards because these are handy. I, E. Here we go. So I've got my image cards are kind of handy. I've had a kind of a long day, so I'm a little batty. Here we are. I, E. Try that. E. Let's mute everybody though. 1 second, or else we can't all hear ourselves, right? Mute, mute, mute. Here we go. E. E. I'd like. What do we say? Help me out. Here we go. I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. Or Anna, I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. It's beautiful because now I'm not looking at anything. I'm really listening to myself. I'm speaking. Now I can go back to the printed sentence in my phone. So there's a lot of practice you can do just with that one sentence. Then what we can do, and this is my epiphany for the day and a great way to kind of finish off, it's a Zoom tip. One of our teachers in a course that I taught today came up with a really helpful numbering system because we wanted to take turns. And, if I look here in Zoom, if you teach a lot of people, their pictures are always shifting and you can't count on somebody always being in the upper left corner. So if I want to rotate around the room, it's been tricky for me. And so Lynn came in the room with saying, oh, everyone write, your number on a piece of paper. And sure enough, we all did that. And then we realized we didn't have to do this because you can change your name in the way it appears in Zoom and put your number in front of your name. Ha! So go there now. This is the way you do it. Put your mouse over your picture and you'll see your mute, unmute, but next to it, you'll see 3 dots. Click on those and then you'll see rename. And you could rename yourself the way I tell you to. So if I tell Anna, rename yourself as number 2, Anna, and Skip, you're 3. So put a 3 in front of your name. And Marianne, try putting a 4 in front of your name. Is everyone with me? How to do this?
How do you start making this change? Put your finger on the picture?
You put your mouse or finger, if you tap on your picture, you should find 3 dots. Are you on a phone right now?
I'm on an iPad.
Okay, there should be a way to look at options for your picture. And in there, you'll see mute audio, pin video, and there's rename. That's one of the options. So now put the number 11. Carol could put the number 12. Matthew has a 5, right? Roland, you could put a 6. And Neil could put a 7. And Herrick, how about 8 for you, right? And Kanli, how about a 9? And Robin can practice. She can change her name so it says 10, Robin. Yeah.
How I do?
You press there on your picture. There are 3 dots, and if you touch the 3 dots, you can use the feature called rename. Okay. Gisela, how about making yourself a number 12? I'm kind of, not sure what number we're on. It's okay. And Natalie, you can try putting a 13 in front of your name. And Dilnosa, 14. Good to see Dilnosa here too. Good. So in this way now, if you look at the room, I'm the leader, I'm number 1. It sounded like I was bragging. I'm number 1. Here I am going to put a 1 because I'm always going to start the activity.
Sorry.
Okay. So now that we have numbers, you can see who is before you, and you can see these numbers, right?
Penny is 100.
Yeah. So now I could have.
I'm going for it, Robin.
All right, Gisela's 12. Natalie's working on it. So now look at the room, and I think it takes a little bit more of a careful setup than I've just given you. But do you see the potential here? We can take turns, right? So I can say, I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. Sentence I cannot remember to save my life. And here she comes again. We're going to let her in. And so Anna, it's your turn. We're just going to say the sentence and nothing else, and the 3rd person and the 4th. Let's try it.
What's the sentence?
The sentence is, thank you. So we've practiced using Blue Canoe in a real Zoom session by going to the chat. And as you'll see here in the chat, I said, go to your lessons and go to business and go to business meetings too, because that's the lesson I wanted for today. And you'll see the first sentence. And then, and I'm glad you asked, Robin, because other people have just joined us too, right? And so then you can turn off the hints by going to the upper right corner, and you can turn the hints off or on and hide them. Now we have the sentence without, so we can do some advanced work. We played with the idea of reading the sentences with different stresses to guess the mood or the intent of the speaker. We also played with sentence and word substitution activities to keep changing the sentence by 1 word and see where that goes, typing it into the chat each time. We also played with creating a chant with the 3 color vowel images that originally appear here on the left side. All of this without actually using Blue Canoe at this moment, right? Because that's what they do outside of class. But we're priming them to care about each sentence as really something that's much more than the sentence itself. There's so much built into it. So now we're at this moment where we said, we've already practiced some, let's just do a little bit around the room work. And we talked about changing our name to have a number and how we can rotate around the room much less awkwardly than before when I have to call people's names and I forgot who I'm after and all that stuff. Okay. So here I am. And this is our final wrap up, kind of practicing this. Herrick, if you can change, I can change your number too, by the way.
Oh, could you please? Because I cannot do it.
I will
Yes.
do it. So I'm
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I think you're a 13. So there we go, renaming you. So I have the power, right? And I can do the same thing for Kan Lee.
Well, you get set 8, right?
Oh, 8? All right, fine. I'll make you an 8. You're so particular. No. All right. And
You can make me a 13.
okay, I will. And I'm going to make you like a 15. Right
Lucky
here.
number.
15. And here, Marianne, what number did I give you?
13, 15, 14.
Okay, I'm going to give you a 16 because sometimes we're wrong and sometimes people are absent. How about
I mean about 15. Why don't give me number
15?
10?
Okay, Natalie, I'm giving you a number. Hold on here, rename.
Carol needs a number.
Yeah, I forgot my number. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. So I could just do this for everybody. It's like fluffing your hair or something. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to make you a 4. At least my numbers. All right. Look at your numbers. Everybody has one.
Okay.
Last activity. Here we go. Because Zoom will always just absorb our time.
So we unmute?
You can unmute,
Okay.
but only speak when it's your turn. And otherwise, you can go ahead and keep the beat with your hand. Huh? Everyone's engaged. I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. Anna, your turn.
I'd like to provide some context for this meeting. Oh,
Good. Skip.
I'd like to provide some context for this meeting.
Carol.
Carol.
I'd like to provide some context for this meeting.
Good.
Was I off?
We want to keep that steady rhythm, so that I'd like to provide, set us up for keeping doing that.
Okay.
In natural speech, we'd say something more like, I'd like to provide some context for this meeting, or, so it's fine. In other words, it's natural to do that. Matthew.
I'd like to provide some context for this meeting.
Nice. 6.
Wow.
I'd like to provide.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think it's me. I'd like to provide some context for this meeting.
Nice. 7.
I'd like to provide some context for this meeting.
I'd like to provide some context for this meeting.
I'd like to provide some context for this meeting.
I'd like to provide some context for this meeting.
I'd
like to provide the context for this meeting.
What? No, that was good. Giselle, is Gisela going to speak?
Penny, I'd like to provide some context to meeting.
Nice. Dilnosa?
Yep. I'd like to provide some context for this meeting.
Nice. Natalie?
I'd like to provide some context for this meeting.
Isn't that nice?
That's cool.
I mean, it's so simple and people generally will get used to it. And if not, I still can call on somebody because I know who's next. Kind of fun. So this is my big aha today. It started with just holding up numbers and then we're like, wait a minute. We can do something
it's
bigger.
Gisella's turn. She didn't get in before.
Who's that?
That again. Gisela.
Gisela. You want to try Gisela? Gisela?
Okay, we'll try. I'd like to provide some context for this meeting.
Beautiful. Yay. We can do that too,
Thank you.
right? Yeah, clapping is kind of hard on the headphones, so we can all do this kind of clapping, right? Fantastic. All right, so I hope this is helpful. What's the big takeaway? Any sort of reflections on takeaways for today?
Well, I'm going to practice this myself. I mean, forget the students. I need to do this. Hide the hints, go through these sentences and see if I can do it, and then use the hints to check what I'm doing. Because I really, this is it really is so difficult for me, the sentence stress.
Mm-hmm.
I need to make it slower.
And try listening to the model like music, as we did too. Mm-hmm. Right? Hum with it. Beautiful. Does everybody know that we have on our teacher resource page in Blue Canoe, which I'm sharing right now, we have a wonderful resource that I'm going to pull up right now, which is hold on, Lessons in Blue Canoe. You see this little item here? It's a little tiny.
Yeah.
When you pull it up, it's really small. But if you use this, I don't recommend printing this, by the way, because I just printed it today and I thought, I'll never be able to read this. This is what it looks like. But that's okay because we have a magnifying glass on our computer. What's beautiful.
So these are all the sentences.
Uh-huh. Is that nice? Right? So you can scroll down knowing that all of these first sentences are readily available for you in the moment in your classroom in Zoom, right? And some might be richer than others. You know, you think, well, I'm going to focus on this approach offers a number of bonuses. I like that sentence. I might decide not to use another sentence. Or maybe it's fun. She said she sold 3 black sheep because it's a tongue twister. You know, you can decide what you'll do, and you also know what the rest of the lesson looks like, okay? So that's a really nice resource to keep. And it's just sitting there ready to be looked at more closely, okay?
That's under Blue Canoe Learning.
Yep, that's in our teacher. Every time Penny sends you a follow-up email or an invitation that's connected there, and I'll send it to you right now in the chat. So there's the PDF right there. And that's the PDF itself. And then it comes from the page called Educator Resources. I have it bookmarked. I recommend the same for you. Just bookmarking and being able to go get those resources.
And this is the new version, right? The new version of Blue Canoe?
Right. So it's, yeah, it's the newly released public version is going to have the same context. I'm sorry, content. I've said that word tonight so much. The same content as the educator's version. It's all the same content. The basic that is free, available for free, just has a limited number of words in Color It Out, which is the top 200 words, and then a limited 1 lesson. But he has a really good taste anyway. So, you know, Carol, your students in Guatemala can download the app for free, and you can have them doing Color It Out, and the videos are there. So those are really helpful, as well as a lesson.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Any final questions? Yeah, Matthew. Number 5.
Just one thing I don't know if I'm the only one in that case, but when I play, when I read the sentences, the feedback I usually get, or the mistakes I usually make are on the words that are not stressed in the application. I mean, for example,
like the word like?
Yeah, for example, yes. Yes.
Good. So that's prioritized feedback. And what that means is if we prioritize the 3 focus words, these 3 words. And that's why I was saying to Anna, there's a little bit of art and craft to how we laid these sentences out. It's also a little bit of art and craft to how we even created the sentences, right? Not all sentences have 3 beats by any stretch, and not all, you know, all of them. You'll see some that actually have 6 beats that we've put into 3 lines. So it'll have a content word like a focus word like provide, and another long line, and it'll be very dense. So know that you have to first get these 3 in target before you get feedback on any of the others. And so you got feedback on that word like, let's say, because you already did really well on the others.
However, yes. However, when I play Color It Out with the cards, for example, red pepper friend, red pepper said, if on the first word I say frowned, it's not going to count because I feel like it only focuses on the last one.
Your feeling is correct. Meaning, in terms of programming, we found we wanted to focus the machine learning on knowing exactly what it's evaluating. And there's a second that's a programming issue, but there's a second reason, which is a brain thing. The patented learning process that we patented, it was kind of amazing, is a brain-based process they called priming, where we're having 6 beats: red pepper friend, red pepper whatever is here in that sixth word, your brain is primed to use a red vowel. And if you're tempted to say said instead of said in the sixth word, then you're more likely to self-correct. Okay, so that's the idea, is we're just focusing on the sixth because it's your best chance of doing it right. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if you make a mistake in the third word, we do not. It's not going to listen to that. It's not built to do that. Okay, but it is listening to the matchingness of the two keyword phrases in red pepper. If you say red pepper, for some reason, red pepper something, it's going to catch that you're not matching, and you can get that feedback that your anchor phrase is not solid. Whew. There's a lot going on in there. We'll do this again. I love your questions. Thank you so much for coming today and tonight and tomorrow. It's kind of strange to talk to tomorrow right now, right, Roland? How's it going tomorrow? It's in good shape over there? All right. I go to bed, Thursday nights I go to sleep knowing the world is
Friday
okay.
will happen.
I have question. And tomorrow have class?
Sorry?
Tomorrow have class?
Tomorrow, do we have class?
Yeah.
You have Fridays at 5.
I do. I have Fridays. Thank you so much, Anna. Like, do I? I do. I have a session tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. It's a technology teaching and pronunciation session. And tomorrow's topic is actually very similar to tonight's. So I give all of you a Friday off. If you come tomorrow, we're going to have a similar conversation. I can say that. Just because we wanted to get this out to everybody, okay? Usually it's a little different, but tomorrow it'll be similar, all right? Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day, a great evening, and a great tomorrow.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
This is so much
Bye.
fun.
Bye.
I love seeing all of you. Take care.
All right.
I want a theme song. This is my next thing.
I'll sing with you, but it'll be out of sync.
Exactly.
Well,
all right. Take care.
please.
Bye-bye. Such a
Bye.
pleasure. Bye, Herrick. Bye, Miriam. Bye, Carol.
Bye-bye, Carrie.
Cheers.